The scaffolding techniques I use are quite similar to the ones that you use as well, Hilary, the ones we got to see in your lesson and in my lesson. The reason for that, I think, is that scaffolding techniques are very versatile. They work across age groups, so from, you know, young children in primary all the way up to post-primary, but they also work across different levels of language proficiency. So modelling can be used across the board, whether it's modelling pronunciation, sentence frames for speaking, for writing, using the substitution tables, or the kind of sentence machines that we use. All of those work as well across the curriculum. So let's say if you're a science teacher and you think, you know, how does that apply to me? Well, let's say if you're using a little text to kind of recount an experiment, you may want to highlight the useful subject-specific vocabulary, and that's also useful to all the students in the class. You could also highlight some useful grammar, so for the children to realize that when you make a prediction about the result, you'll be using will. Or you could also highlight useful phrases that'll be useful for all the students as well, such as I can predict that. Through our research, we have found out that. So those are things we can do through modelling and through text analysis, just to highlight useful language for the students. Other scaffolding techniques that I find really useful include the dictogloss, which is a type of dictation. It's a brilliant technique to help the kids develop their listening skills, their writing skills, their speaking skills. It really fosters that spirit of collaborative learning. One drawback, it's really time consuming. So if you use it in your lesson, you need to factor in a fair amount of time for the students to be able to rewrite the text. But again, it's an easy task to differentiate. And again, I've adapted different tasks and they'll all be on the website, so we can have a look at those. Other techniques I would use, and you've mentioned this, but I don't think we can stress it enough, is the use of home languages. The idea here is to draw on all the children's languages to help them access the curriculum. That can range from using bilingual, multilingual glossaries. That includes dual language texts, which we can create using Google Docs, Microsoft Word. Or we think, well, if the children are having to produce a text in English, can we let them draft that text in their home language first? So they get to focus on what it is they want to say first in their home language, and then, like a separate process, they can focus on how they're going to articulate their ideas in English. Can we let the students do research in their home language? Why not? It's a really useful way to scaffold for the children. There's a search engine called Multilingual, and it's like Google, but it comes up in 2 languages, so it's really, really useful. Lastly, you've mentioned the graphic organizers, and I think they're absolutely brilliant, and I know a lot of teachers use them to help their kids rank information, compare and contrast, explain cause and effect. But what I've noticed for a lot of children, including children for whom English is their first language, they need that bit of help to go from word level to sentence and text level. It's a kind of continuum of practice. And I find that especially for the children who use EAL, it's really useful to give them useful phrases. So again, going back to our sentence frame, so let's say if they were comparing and contrasting, they might need to be given the phrases similar to, different from, unlike, likewise. And again, they can maybe take a bit of time to translate those phrases in their first language as well. So I do think the visual graphic organizers are really useful, but they work better provided that the children are guided from the note-taking stage to the text writing stage. Well, I think we adapt our teaching in the same way. So our lesson outcomes can vary, right? We want all the children in our class to achieve. So we tend to adapt our teaching for all children, right? And scaffolding techniques are used across the board in mainstream education for all children. But I think there's also an interesting difference for the children using EAL. It's that they're always doing 2 jobs at the same time. They're learning English, that's number 1, and they're learning through English, that's number 2. So the cognitive load for those children, you know, we can't undermine how tiring it is to always be processing new content through a new language. And that means that, yes, our adaptive teaching, our scaffolding techniques need to be a little bit different. First thing as teachers is about modifying or grading our language. It sounds easy, but it's actually quite difficult. But we need to make sure, for example, that our instructions are as graded as possible using, clear, bossy verbs. So now read, now write, as opposed to the, okay, so now what I'd like you to do, if you see what I mean, is, so using quite concise, clear language, I think is really important. And, we have to support their language development. And I know it's really difficult whenever you've got maybe 30 children in a class and you're teaching geography and you think, how am I supposed to do this? But I do think that through, those sentence frames, modeling, all of those, I think all children actually benefit from that bit of extra scaffolding. I think we're going through really exciting times in education, in mainstream education also. I think we're shifting from monolingual mainstream to multilingual mainstream. And this is a mind shift for all of us educators, especially if we're not trained to teach English as a second language. But I think it's a really exciting time to be working as an educator in our schools. I think we're all lucky to be working with such variety of children, such diversity of linguistic and cultural backgrounds.